My name's Rick. I do what I can. I'm sitting on that beat. I'm a motherfucker out here. I'll be spitting in that street. Oh
no, stupid horns. I just fell out of the Porsche. Lots of money in my bank account.
Yes, I could just talk shit about this one all day, given that it seems to draw influences from just about every loathed musical style in retrospect, but it's honestly less tiring and more in my lane to blast my eardrums with it again and again, because that's what I've been doing instead. Dense, recurrent, rich, glassy. I'm not talking about Chrissy Teigen. It's just that the new album from Polish collective Alameda 5 is very damn good.
With the windows wide, with the windows wide by my side.
Adrienne Lenker is a fantastic writer. Her poetry really captivates me, and singing it over the kind of music that makes you want to stand in the cold early hours of the morning and breathe frosty steam out of your mouth for those 43 minutes is a special kind of endearing. The melodies are daydreams that hold my hand and lead me into places I wish I could be in the real life if it weren't for my inadequacy. But Lenker's words and whispery voice tell me that everything is going to be okay. My first listen to this had me thinking that it was just usual indie folk fare, but one night I put it on and I paid attention, and the air felt tangible. Inevitably, I'm going to see a lot of assumptions that this is only interesting because it's Eric Andre behind all of it, but it holds up very well on its own terms really, creatively put together and all that. It didn't need a 12-minute noise piece in the middle. That might just be my beta side speaking, but I have places to be, and none of them are Maccas, I'll tell you that. Pretty solid debut. At this point I'm questioning what I even expect from post-hardcore at this point, and if all Brutus really feel the need to offer is surging energy, echoing wails, and drumming that makes me want to pick up a pair of sticks and start fucking up the desk, then sure, I'll take it. Nest rumbles with vocal power that could summon fountain sculptures to life. My reservation with CHON and the gently lapping sea of twinkling and soothing math rock is that I can hear where they should be evoking such strong emotional responses, and yet all that ever passes through the folds of my mind matter is, it sounds lovely. It is by design that the approach to math rock is so fluid that they'll pass from one moment to the next without really hammering anything in, and my silly old brain prefers something with a little bit more pattern. Yeah, whatever. Boy, we coming out Listen, this one's just stupidly fun. I was gonna try and write about this one for a full video, but all I could do was think about how hard these songs are gonna go in September. My theme song is crazy good, by the way. Cheers, Zell. You've probably seen this one pop up in your YouTube suggestions feed, and so did I, and it's pretty cool. Sometimes you really do find something that goes hard with those beats, and still makes you feel as if you're sifting through Red Room live streams at the same time. Even if it's too unmastered for its own good at points, I still think it holds itself well this way, dark and deeply pained as it is. It seems more like a coping device. Future's at a different level when being honest about his accountabilities and sadnesses, almost like with every passing thought about something that upsets him, he spirals further into a state of depression. Glass shatters, coughing, vocal lines that go off-beat, passing thoughts about some bad shit in Israel. Certainly listen for Shotgun if nothing else. What a track that one is. It's a shame that I was one of the reviewers that really hyped up Hatchie with her glamorous and frankly heartwarming EP last year, only to end up not being into Keepsake at all. But that's just how it happens, right? I'd understand somebody else thinking that this was absolutely lovely, but the sound was already so familiar in the first place that I wasn't sure if I'd be as impressed with a full-length album, especially when it keeps emulating that same sparkly dream pop formula, and alas, good soldier, I was correct.
Tell me what you want me to do, you say.
Whatever colour there was in their debut has been drained out in favour of really autopilot brass arrangements and dance rhythms that barely make me want to twitch my eyebrows. I don't know if it's bad as opposed to being obscenely boring, but there is a reason that I listened to this the day that it dropped and switched to something else halfway through track 1. It took me a few more months to muster up all the energy that I had to pay attention to the rest of it. I suppose that when it comes to Jambonai's inspiring and volcanic fusion of Korean folk music and sludgy post-rock, this might be their least varied and most by-the-numbers record they've done to date, but because literally nobody else is doing this shit, that's fine. I just know that even if I ate mustard and apricot bakewells every day, there would still be a point over time where I'm not flinching anymore. A good amount of this is so densely and overwhelmingly layered to the point where trying to decode what scene is actually supposed to be set is a bit of a patience test in itself, making it surprisingly anxious for how calm it remains, like several different memories colliding and spilling out.
Don't you be a meanie, thought you wanted me to go, why you trying to keep me teeny?
I think I actually respect this one more than I like. No, I'm kidding, it's really bad. Sometimes I've wanted to get the same sinisterly occult atmosphere of a neo-folk record without those awkwardly fascist undertones that make me feel as if I'm being inducted into some kind of Nazi wedding reception. Drone Flower seems to flourish in that regard. Even if it's not straight neo-folk, it certainly hugs up against that aesthetic. For what it lacks in individually stunning moments, it's certainly good at being dark and earthly at its core.
I'm trying to get free. I'm trying.
I must admit I appreciate this more than I really like it, but the way that Mariba weaves her voice around the delicately smooth instrumentation and her descriptions of African history and culture gives me the sense that one day I'll wake up, I'll put this on, and I'll have my soul suddenly shaken up.
Party up the street, even though there is no place to park.
I'm not desperate to defend this one against a negative comment anytime soon, but nonetheless, I thought this was alright. I actually appreciate the song Party Up the Street, which is genuinely very gorgeous, like the aftermath of a crazy party, when you're on your way home but can still hear the vibrations of the sound system booming in your memory. Okay, I'll be real, you're all kidding me right now. This EP wasn't anywhere near as bad as it was built up to be. I thought most of it wasn't half bad, not even a quarter poor. Inject that catitude into my veins.
Go, 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 go. Don't try to my fire. Or not to go through.
There are times when this band will rip out the sickest bass lines for like 8 seconds before the song collapses into hysteric chaos. Yes, it is indeed quite good, although it gives me the urge to watch Teen Titans again. It sounds like what happens when you push and break through the physical makeup of the world and fall outside the boundaries. It's not even the back rooms type of music, it's like that void you're in when the chunks haven't loaded in Minecraft. After such a wild, jerky, footworky ride on We Rob Rave 2, We Rob Rave 3 takes a lot more of its grapes from the vineyard of jungle music, which makes for something that, yet again, you want to move your legs sporadically to, even using plenty of samples that you're likely to have heard from other DJ mixes that perk you up, like when you and your friends go, "Oh!" when a song that you all know comes on. It's less immediately engaging than number 2, but it certainly has a lot more of a developed club and dance floor atmosphere. Eastern Europe seems to have this new age rave music down pat. I actually reckon the tracks on this one are pretty cool, a bit like imagining what a fever dream sounds like. As much as I can appreciate good sound play, I can't exactly feel anything from this one, which is usually what tends to separate me from a lot of postmodernist digital age vignettes. It's certainly a cool album and concept, but it gets no reaction out of me.
Clockwork Orange, I ain't in the day of porridge. Don't make me Chuck Norris.
An album with some of the most creative sounding production I've heard this year, and one of the most potent concepts, and yet it has some of the least compelling lyrics. I was ready to feel sick of the highly predictable offerings of the Sunn discography, but it turns out that the first half of this might be their best studio recordings yet. It's dense and beautiful, and the more that you stare at this cover art while listening, the more that you swear it's moving. It's cute and charming, and yet somehow quite complex and calculated as well. Even if it's a bit cheesy, it's also sincere, so it kind of cancels out. It's obviously very good. If this isn't just a one-off project, I'd like to hear more cavernous and spacious sounding metal, the kind that's really suited for an astronomical horror film. I know you can't hear anything in space, but I know what I would rather hear as my body's exploding in a starry vacuum if it were between dead silence and atmospheric sludge metal. This is a compilation of the 10 songs that the Screamo band William Bonney had written. Because it's Screamo, you should expect shards of your heart to break away really quickly, but more impressively, a very optimistic light that glimmers through the cracks, which actually gives this a lot of uplift as frontman Jack Senif screams his lungs out until he's coughing up a mixture of phlegm and Ribena. What's up? And it's time for my favourite part of these roundups, talking about my favourite albums and songs that came out during the month. Because I'm covering 2 months in this video, I'm going to start off with May. As usual, these aren't in any particular order, but I will be ending off with my favourite album. My first pick of May is Body Meets Truck Music. This is a really forward-thinking and exciting fusion of a whole bunch of contemporary styles, including footwork, R&B, trap, dub, everything including the kitchen sink, but it's so jittery and short-breathed that you almost won't have enough time to really grasp what's going on truly, until you spend a little bit more time with it. It might sound messy at first, but the more I listened to it, the more it began to make sense. My next pick is one that I left a lot of people in suspense over, wondering what I thought of this one, and it turns out that I really loved it, and these guys were amazing live as well. Injury Reserve's self-titled album. If there was an album that really defines what Injury Reserve are all about, everything that they can do on a record, then it's this one. It knows when to be bombastic and fun, and it also knows when to be introspective and reel everything back. One of the most colourful records I've heard this year. And speaking of colourful, and more specifically flying colours, I want to talk about the new Chemical Brothers album, No Geography, one that I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did, but it happened, and you know what, I'm pleased. A fantastic throwback to what made the Chemical Brothers such a big deal back then when they came out with Exit Planet Dust and Dig Your Own Hole. Those trippy psychedelic soundscapes mixed in with the driving and pulsing beats of Big Beat and Acid House. But this one sounds so propulsive and just constantly moving forward. I've never heard an album this year that was so kinetic to the point where the first time I was listening to it, I couldn't stop moving in my seat. But my favourite album of May was the Pile album, Green and Grey. Pile are a band that seem to occupy this unpinnable space between indie rock, post-hardcore, math rock, post-punk. Instead of being cathartic with all its anguish, it's very slow-burning and patient. And because of this, a lot of the moments where the songs go in a whole bunch of different directions, the transitions between a lot of the songs' set pieces are so natural. These songs evolve so organically that it's musically captivating, but on a conceptual level, this album is all about time and aging and learning to deal with fate and not trying to cheat it anymore. It's extremely poignant, it's quite saddening, but it's also one of the most captivating experiences I've had with a record this year. And that's it for the albums of May. I want to talk about my favourite songs that came out during that month, starting off with Earthquake by Tyler the Creator, featuring Playboy Carti. I know you love that verse, I do too. Get Free by Mariba, Roam the Bottom by Alameda, The Rapture by William Bonney. It was quite difficult to pick my favourite song out of that compilation, but I think The Rapture that'll do. But speaking of another album where picking my favourite song is kind of a matter of mere choice, I think that the Carly Rae Jepsen album Dedicated has a lot of great songs on it, and Everything He Needs happens to be my favourite. In fact, it's the best. I'm not kidding, it's true. Lord of Calendars by Pile. And next up, I know I said I didn't like this album in the roundup, but this is the one track that really did just wow me, and it's like a straight up punk song really. Doorman by Slow Tie, Butcher of the World by Lingua Ignota, in which she screams her lungs out over the Funeral March by Henry Purcell, Shake 88 by Denzel Curry, the best Shake Your Ass song I could ever ask for, the really warm and homely Candy by Lafafa. Then I'm going to shout out two songs from the Flying Lotus album, one that I said in my review that I didn't really like all the way through, but these two singles I think are fantastic on their own. Of course, Black Balloons Reprise featuring Denzel Curry, and More featuring Anderson .Paak. Then a song I wanted to shout out from the new Injury Reserve album. Of course, it's quite difficult for me to pick my favourite, but I decided on Wax On featuring Freddie Gibbs. Then LED by Kedar Levansky, an unexpected ballad in the middle of an Outside a House record, but one that really reminds me of the city, like specifically concrete buildings in the city. The amazing title track from No Geography by the Chemical Brothers, the slightly cheesy but beautifully sincere song We Are Taking You Home by Is Lorelei, and my favourite song of May 2019, Cattails by Big Thief. Nothing has sounded so perfect for a morning walk than this one. What a song. What a song. This roundup's going to feature 8 albums. 8. Starting off with Mazy Fly by Spelling, one of the most disturbing albums I've heard this year, but not because it's grotesque or visceral or anything like that. It's the way that Spelling writes melodies on this thing. They sound like they're reflective of a world or a timeline where everything is just going wrong and it's too late to fix anything now. But it's also one of the most bewitching albums I've ever heard. The sound design is fantastic. It sounds so dungeon-like and extraterrestrial. My second pick for the month is Labelle's Orchestre Univers. taking influences from Maloya, a musical genre that is very worth looking into. You can definitely hear the influences in the percussion and the arrangements. This takes on a very post-minimalist kind of flair, with the constant repetition, the way the songs are building up, but very subtly. It sounds like such a grand adventure and is one of the best live performance recordings you'll hear this year. If you haven't heard this one yet, you're missing out. My next pick is Mike's Tears of Joy, the new mixtape from Mike, one of the most forward-thinking producers and rappers in hip-hop right now, creating beats from sporadic and jittery samples from soul and gospel. Everything on this album sounds like it's constantly skipping, but that's to represent him being at a bit of a roadblock mentally because of the passing of his mother. The album is very much about him coming to terms with it, finding ways to cope and see the light and the darkness. My next pick is Schlagenheim by Black Midi. They sound like a blend of all the experimental rock acts that came before them, and as such they sound totally in their own lane. Quite phenomenal. But you know what else is phenomenal? Weatherday. This album from bedroom musician Weatherday was recorded on a headset mic, and yet it still remains one of the most emotionally potent albums I've heard this year. It's so fine-tuned in this space of lo-fi indie pop. If you really enjoy a lot of the lo-fi indie pop stuff like Just Fern, Twin Fantasy by Car Seat Headrest, that kind of stuff that's so rough around the edges and sound like it's on the verge of falling apart, but still bleeds through with these fantastically strong melodies, then this is definitely for you. Katie Day's Solipsisters. It's a smooth-sailing album, but it's also a deeply pained one, about being more than your bodies, about more than what you are physically, and speaking about albums that are focusing on coming to terms with yourself, and especially when it comes to identity and trauma as being an LGBTQ youth. Ohtearsofjoy, Bonsoir Fucker. This is supposedly the last of Ohtearsofjoy's ventures into this sort of experimental, glitchy hip-hop, but as a defined musical statement on all the trauma and the ostracism that you face being a queer youth with nobody, almost nobody to support you. This may be one of, if not the most important albums of the year. A big shout out to Baptiste as well. Really looking forward to what they're dropping next. And my album of June, the album of June, I've really been waiting for Kate Tempest to drop something, and as a statement of what it's like in the present tense, socially and politically, and in terms of the loneliness everyone's facing under the weight of late capitalism. This is her most hard-hitting set of spoken word poetry yet. I think it's the way that she's presenting it a lot more like free-spirited poems, and yet the instrumentals that are backing her play such a big role in just setting the scene. They are part of what makes this shine, the way that they evolve so organically and so subtly as well, you almost don't notice it. This also has some of her most hard-hitting lines. Just watch my review. I wrap it up a lot better and more elaborately in there. And because this video is going to go on for so long, I just want to blast through my 25 favorite songs of June 2019. So I'm going to start off with the really glossy and catchy Juicy by Doja Cat, one of the tracks that saw DJ Nate coming back to his footwork roots, fittingly called Come Back. Dead Zone by Jojo Abbott. I'm really hoping to review the EP that this is from very soon. It's extremely dense and uplifting and empowering. The Ballad of the Hulk by Bill Callahan. Honestly, I can get down with the new Lou Bega track, which interpolates the legendary Scatman John, Scatman and Hatman. I'm not really sure why Lou Bega's trying to convince us that he was ever called Hatman, but we'll go with it. Without a Blush by Hatchie, the one single from the album that I ended up really liking. Dreams by Sean Reedy. All the Time by French Vanilla. Si tu eres mi hombre by Lorena Alvarez. I probably butchered all that pronunciation, but that's just how it is. This Moment by Shinichiro Yokota. Cataracts by Freddie Gibbs and Madlib. Planet by Mike. Siete by Nicola Cruz. Cry for Another by Claude Fontaine. Rosewood by Culture Abuse and Lil Ugly Mane. Shotgun by Future. Kukala by Angelique Kidjo. A fantastic Celia Cruz cover. Easter Sunday by Zalupas featuring Earl Sweatshirt. House vs. House by Blank Mass. Due West by Kelsey Lou. I'm not sure how to pronounce this one. Haute Couture by Rosalia. The exciting new single from Shy Girl Uckers, I Trap You by Kate Tempest. Stupid Horse by 100 Gecs, of course, one of the best hooks of the year, song of the summer. And my favorite song of June 2019 was Gretel by Sandy Alex G.
With that Harvey, I'm like motherfucker, got the shirt on, ripping that PJ Harvey.